So apparently, reading social media before I record is a mistake, but apparently, according to some people, this game was boring. Can't convince me of that. I thought this was a pretty good time, to be honest with you. Am I going to request to watch it again? Probably not. Am I glad I watched it? Absolutely. And just like the title says, I think we fully got an understanding tonight of the gap between a team that is ready for a flag. I know they already won one, and then one that is aiming for one. Because, and I don't want the title to make anyone think that I'm going to shit on the Dogs. I'm not, right? They did pretty well tonight, to be honest. And both teams didn't play perfectly. The conditions didn't allow that. The pressure of both teams didn't allow the other to do that. So this is not a case of, well, they weren't perfect, so go forth and multiply. That's not what I mean in the slightest. It was, with what was presented to them, they took their chances for a large part, and for a team that has been, so adept at scoring the last 2 weeks, they have been well below their production. They averaged 107 points going into that game against the Crows. Last week, I should say, the Dogs. And in the last 2 weeks, so that would imply 214 points a fortnight. Now in the last 2 weeks, they've kicked, to 166 odd-ish around that mark. So credit both to the Crows, who I thought went underrated in their defensive performance, and then Brisbane tonight is, yes, it was a 10-point game, 4 points on the siren, of course, with Will Ashcroft's third goal of the night. He was unbelievable. But the difference between a team that can contend and are contending and the difference between a team that isn't, but is trying to, is very simply two factors. And the two factors, I think, were the gap in the game. And it was what you do with momentum and then what you allow forward of centre. And Brisbane did both of those things better than the Bulldogs tonight, and I actually think did them better in a pretty significant way, to be honest. Yes, the scoreboard 12-14 and 12-4 is closer than what you may think. I have no idea what the expected score is from tonight. I don't really care, to be honest. At no point tonight did I think, ooh, the Dogs are the better side, but at no point tonight did I think they're about to get smacked. So they had that balance there, and I know a lot of people are going to point to now, I think it's 1-8. The Bulldogs are against teams that are in the 8. They are currently 9th. Now, my opinion, hot take, if that's what you want to go with it, is absolutely fine. I think now the 8 is set. If Hawthorn do what they're expected to do, and look, if Freo can beat Collingwood, that's great, but I am probably closer now to saying that the 8 is going to be what it is. Now, I haven't looked at the Bulldogs run home in saying that, but if the results go the way we think, especially with the Hawks there, Adelaide Gold Coast is going to be super interesting because the Crows, if they do win that game, Gold Coast do have a good draw on the run home. They've got a good amount of challenge there. So I just worry about the amount of catch-up that the Dogs are going to have to do. Now, the easy rebuttal to that is that the Dogs have got the percentage, so they'll break any kind of tie on points. But that's kind of where I stand with this. But in terms of what you're able to do with momentum, and again, this isn't going to be a case of me overglazing Brisbane either, because going inside 50, especially in the third quarter, they were terrible in big spots, but were still able to generate the 26 scoring shots. I actually think they had 9 by count, ones that didn't either make the distance or went out on the full. So you're able to generate 35 genuine looks at a score is just ridiculous. That Brisbane kind of remind me, this is going to be pretty niche, but they remind me of the Season 2 Criminal Minds episode called Open Season. And very quickly as possible, it's a case of two brothers in the forest. Where? No idea. There's 18 seasons of Criminal Minds. I don't remember where they're all held. But effectively, they capture women, because why wouldn't you? Well, you shouldn't for moral reasons, but the way the show is portrayed, and they effectively let them go and hunt them down in the forest. That's what Brisbane do. If at any point in time you think you've got momentum, you're about to get away, they will find you and make you pay. And we'll kind of leave the analogy there. But that's what this is. I mean, you could call it Eden Lake too, but they're teenagers and they're pricks. Even more so. I can't believe I'm comparing murderers in a game review. Move on, dads. Righto. But effectively what it is that Brisbane go, right, they give up momentum. Don't get me wrong. Brisbane do. Collingwood do. Every team gives up momentum in the majority of games, especially when they play, the top 12 teams even, right? Sure, you may not give up momentum to, say, a West Coast or a Richmond, depending on the day. But in this game, the Bulldogs had momentum and had it at least once a quarter, right? Especially in the second and the last quarter, the Dogs did nearly enough, right? Conditions, again, allowing, I understand, and pressure the same as well. But Brisbane defensively were awesome in both arcs. I thought defensively they did great. Now, Ed Richards got punished on a couple of occasions because he doesn't have a right foot. that is what it is. You try to give yourself an extra split second, you'll get hunted down. And that happened on a couple of occasions, especially in that last quarter. But even up forward, Cam Rayner, who in the last month is tackling like a dead set machine at the moment, he kind of scares me a little bit, Cam Rayner does, when he's tackling like that. But the contest that Kai Loman's able to give as well forward of center, like if he's 2-on-1 in the air, you still give him a genuine chance. But you've got to make Brisbane pay. The Bulldogs didn't do that. Right, they were butchering inside 50s in that third quarter. The Dogs would get it forward, and they would just miss that target, right? And they are the little things, right? It's a game of inches, it's a game of this, it's a game. But effectively, this game is, what do you do with the ball? What do you do with momentum? That's it. Because the only way to break up momentum is scoring, right? The amount of times that I hear people to go, all right, the opposition have got momentum. Let's slow it down. Let's hang on to the ball. Sure, that could work, but if it doesn't equate to a score, you've wiped off a minute off the scoreboard, which might be great at the end of a quarter, but when you look up on the scoreboard and you go, shit, it's 9.5 minutes into the last quarter, I don't think that's going to work. And they just couldn't do that. Painful at times. Handballs were like a 7 out of 10, but when you're being met by 9 out of 10 pressure, you're in the weeds. And they just found themselves doing that. On a micro level, I think the Dogs deserve a decent amount of credit for the way they played tonight. I think against nearly, I would say, 10 teams in the competition, I think they get the win convincingly. I think against 4 teams, the way they played tonight, you might get a coin flip, and a few teams you wouldn't get the win. One of those, of course, was tonight. Now, leading forward from this is going to be, where the hell do the Dogs go from here? And look, I don't hide from the fact that a month ago I did a video on if the Dogs can win the flag and what they're doing that is going to equate to that. I also said in that video I was worried about them defensively, and that's aging like Selma Hayek right now. But I'm not going to shy away from that. Now, in the month, the 5 weeks of footy I think that the Dogs have played since then has only furthered that defensive opinion, and they haven't quite had the offense against the teams that they need to have good offense against. But it's going to be a little bit of a storm, I think, brewing if they don't make the 8. But what Brisbane are able to do and just go, we're fine. At no stage did they panic. The only time I saw panic in Brisbane at all was with about a minute and a half to go. They were out. And again, if you get a mark inside 50, the game is over, which they eventually got with Ashcroft. The irony is that Charlie lowered his eyes, Charlie Cameron that is, lowered his eyes to Will Ash with 40 seconds left. But Charlie also had the most panicked moment of the night, and that was when he wheeled around on his left and just blindly snapped it inside 50 from the center square, because sometimes you just got to go, shit, let's get some territory. He had 2 Brisbane players running by him for the handball, relatively uncontested. Now, I don't know what Charlie's like with the left-handed handball, but that player there, who may have been an Ashcroft off the top of my head, was in open space. The handball, with his right hand, maybe was a little bit more under pressure, but he still wheeled on his left side. And we are talking about professional AFL athletes here. You should be able to handball on your opposite hand, for crying out loud. But apart from that, Brisbane did everything right when they had to. And it was almost as if the piece of play wasn't hard enough, they weren't making it happen, which is somewhat ironic. And it seems like the only time they've been made to pay for that in a significant way on their home deck was the loss against Melbourne, which is quite extraordinary. But moving forward from here, Brisbane are contenders because they have got such an evenness in their list, a game plan and a structure that stands up, a lack of panic, composure, really good pressure. And when they give up momentum, it's never detrimental to their cause when it matters. Whereas the Bulldogs, who I think I can put in the pretender status for this season, the gap there is that when they had momentum, they were good. They weren't great. And in order to take that next step, you need to be great against great teams. And they weren't tonight. They were my main takeaways. What do you guys think? Comment below. Let me know. And I need to go to bed. I am tired. Very tired. But this was a good game of footy. I enjoyed it. I think we are looking for reasons to complain rather than reasons to smile. And look, I thought tonight was relatively good. Score reviews, though, are a crock of shit. But that's a whole nother video idea story. So I'm going to go. Hawks are playing tomorrow. Fingers crossed we get the win over Port Adelaide. See you in the next one. Goodbye.